What's going on, everybody?
I can tell. Too late, I'm in the 40s. Gotta go around the horn. Faster.
If you don't know me, my name is in Sometimes Why. If you do know me, my name is still and Sometimes Why. It doesn't change whether you know me or not. Today, I wanted to take an somewhat advanced statistic and bring it into some recent stuff that has happened in the NBA. First, LaMelo Ball got traded to Minnesota. I'll pull up the trade package in a second. I believe it was Naz Reid, a 2033 first-round pick. You heard that right. That kid is 11 years old right now. And some pick swaps, and the Hornets also sent out Josh Green. My initial reaction is, why? And the second thing I want to talk about is Jaylen Brown and his recent comments bashing analytics, as it came out that some people in analytics view him as the seventh best player on a team, not just the seventh best player in the NBA, like on the Boston Celtics. So my initial reaction to that is, what analytics are these people using that say that? But they kind of have a point. And I'm going to get into that after I talk about the LaMelo Ball trade. I forgot to even mention what stat I'm bringing up. So I am going to be bringing up on-off for anyone that doesn't know what that is and compare it to plus-minus. Because I feel like a lot of people know what plus-minus is, and it's just how good is the team when you are on the court. On-off takes that to a different level. Like if you have a plus-minus of +5, your team won the minutes that you were on the court by 5. On-off takes that and adds a whole different level to it by saying, we're also going to count the minutes that you're not on the court. And how well does the team do when you are not on the court? Which is still flawed, but it makes more sense than plus-minus. Because plus-minus, you could have a really good plus-minus. You could just be coasting off of your teammates. On-off will say, if you're coasting with your teammates, you'll have a higher plus-minus, but you won't have as high of an on-off. So the way on-off works, just to give an example, let's say you had a +5. But then let's say in the minutes that you're not playing, the team loses by 5. So your on-off would be 5 minus -5. Which 2 minuses make a plus. So your on-off would be +10. Which means the team is 10 points better with you on the court versus off. Because not only are they winning the minutes that you're on the court by 5, they're also losing the minutes you're not on the court by 5. That makes a difference as opposed to if you're a +5, but then your team breaks even when you're off the court. Or let's say you're a +5, but then your team is a +10 without you. Your on-off would be -5. Your team would be actually better off not playing you as much. I hope that all made sense. The first thing I wanted to get into with on-off was the LaMelo Ball trade and why I don't understand why the Hornets did it. I wrote down a couple notes. So I'm going to use Cleaning the Glass like I always do. It's a great website. $5 a month if you're a stats nerd. Best $5 a month I spend. The overall message I have for Charlotte is why. I get the injury history, but if you remove that, LaMelo Ball was a +10 on-off. One of the highest on the team. But the other cool thing that Cleaning the Glass has is lineups. And LaMelo Ball was in 3 out of the 4 lineups that qualified and played enough possessions that had a positive net rating, which means they won the minutes that they played. And he was in 3 of those 4 lineups. So getting rid of a player like that is very detrimental. He also was in the 97th percentile for turnover percentage on-off, meaning Charlotte takes much better care of the ball when he's on the court versus when he is off the court. Turnovers matter a lot, and we're going to get into this later. Turnovers matter because you are giving yourself more chances to score. We've been over this. He was also in the top 3 out of 4 lineups was Miles Bridges, but he is also a net negative on-off, whereas LaMelo is a plus 10. So you can use on-off to understand, oh wow, the Hornets, Miles Bridges is in 3 of these lineups, but they're also, I think it was 6 points better with him off the court. Whereas LaMelo was 9.9, 10, we'll say 10, we'll give it that. So for me, I just don't get why Charlotte did this when he was such a key part of why they were good outside of the injury risk with LaMelo Ball, which is real. But from a numbers standpoint, if you get rid of those injury risks, it does not make much sense for Charlotte. And it makes sense for Minnesota, who is a middle-of-the-pack team in turnover percentage. So adding someone who takes care of the ball, adding someone who is a great playmaker in LaMelo Ball is going to help a lot. Especially, I think the person who is happiest right now is Rudy Gobert, is he's going to get some of the easiest buckets you guys have ever seen. LaMelo Ball is on his team now. And Anthony Edwards does a great job of being a playmaker, but there's levels to this, and LaMelo Ball he's one of the better passers in the game. He will be able to find Rudy Gobert. Hopefully he catches the passes. But it will be a lot easier for Rudy Gobert to get points. I also think it will be a big relief to everyone else in Minnesota, as they were relying on like Mike Conley, who is very old. They were relying on Anthony Edwards when he's more of a scorer. He can now focus on his role as a scorer while letting LaMelo Ball take some of the playmaking duties, and also bringing a new dimension of offense that he doesn't bring. And if they want to compete with teams like OKC and San Antonio, this is a step in the right direction. I don't think it takes them over the top. I still think they have more work to do, but this is a step in the right direction for them. Basically swapping Julius Randle and Naz Reid for LaMelo Ball, as Julius Randle is what gave them the money to be able to do this. I talked about that in my last video. I knew they had something else up their sleeve, and it was this. And they might not be done yet. They might want Jaylen Brown. Oh my god, what a good transition, because that's what we're talking about next. Jaylen Brown called analytics AI hoops and said it is used to control narratives. And while there is some merit to that, my first reaction was, what analytics are saying Jaylen Brown is the 7th best player on the Boston Celtics? But they kind of have a point. I don't think I would go as far to say he's the 7th best player on the Celtics. Obviously, he's the 2nd best player on the Celtics at worst. His on-off has consistently been negative since 2022. Now, I don't know what changed, because in 2022, he was a plus 8. And then the past few years, he's been around -5. He's been even, but then this year, 2025, 2026, this year he was a -5.6 on-off, meaning the Celtics were 5.6 points better with him off of the court. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that. It's a flawed stat. It could just be an outlier. But when there have been a few years of consistent negative on-off stats, there's something there. It doesn't mean Jaylen Brown is a bad player. Obviously, he's not. We have eyes. But it means there is something that is not being captured by what we're seeing with our eyes. And when I went to look, I looked at 4 factors on cleaning the glass. We know 4 factors: effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, free throw rate, offensive rebound percentage. And the one that really stood out to me was turnover percentage, both on offense and on defense. On offense, he was below average in turnover percentage. And in the past 2 years, on defense, he was in the 6th percentile of turnover percentage, meaning he is taking away possessions from the Celtics, as in having more turnovers. It might not be him specifically, for all of these turnovers. But when he is on the court, more turnovers happen. And when he is on the court on defense, the Celtics force less turnovers. Not necessarily his fault. But when there's a couple years of this, you start to see a pattern. Now, obviously, I don't think I would ever go as far to say that Jaylen Brown is the 7th best player on the team. It's very clear that he's very talented. But we're not talking about, like when I'm talking about analytics, seeing some flaws in Jaylen Brown's game. It's not AI hoops. It's not like those crazy not even like value over replacement player, like some model like LeBron or Raptor or EPMs. There's rate adjusted plus minus. There's a bunch of those. And we can talk about that at some point. It's a little bit more mathy. It's basically a model that estimates a player's impact towards winning basketball. In that stat, Jaylen Brown is positive. And he's not like he's around, I would say, like top 50, closer to 50, which is not the 7th best player on the team. That's usually the 1st or 2nd best player on a team. So analytics can see that Jaylen Brown is a winning player. There could be context in the on-off, like maybe the lineups that he's not in are also very good. Or maybe the Celtics bench is very deep and they outscore other teams' benches. But there's been a few years now where Jaylen Brown has been a negative player on-off. The Celtics have been a better team without him on the court in terms of net rating, which he's won more games than anybody in the past 10 years. He's been on a good team, and he's contributed to that team, and he's won Finals MVP. But it's not AI hoops. It's on-off. It's not really that complicated. It's just your minutes, your plus-minus when you're on the court, and your plus-minus when you're off the court. That's not some crazy formula. It's that minus this. If I can teach it to you guys, I think... No, I'll cut that part out. I mean, I'm not that smart. If I could communicate it to you and teach it, it's not that complicated. So, it's not some AI hoops, even though there is some AI hoops going on. The other thing about analytics ruining the game that Jaylen Brown said, analytics won or contributed to Boston winning a championship. They're a team that values the math of three-point shots and jacks up a lot of three-point shots and lives and dies by the three. And in 2024, they lived by the three and they won because they played a style of basketball where everybody could attack a closeout and everybody could shoot. And at points when those shots were going in, they were unstoppable. Teams wouldn't have played like that before analytics. Boston is a very analytically driven team. So maybe that's where Jaylen Brown has his rift with Boston. I don't know Jaylen Brown. I'm not in that locker room. I don't know what's going on. He seems like a smart guy. It seems like Boston did something that he didn't like. But analytics are not ruining the game. Because you won Finals MVP on an analytically driven team. You played amazing in that series. And you were rewarded for it with Finals MVP. Now, saying he's the 7th best player on a team, I don't know what model's using that. My reaction is still a little bit crazy. But I did not realize that he was a negative player on-off. Players like that have been like Carmelo Anthony, DeMar DeRozan, have been people that in the analytics community viewed as lesser than they were viewed by the rest of the basketball community. It doesn't mean they're bad players. It doesn't, like, they're obviously very talented. Jaylen Brown, especially on the defensive end, more than Carmelo and DeMar DeRozan. But it's not some crazy analytics formula that's saying there's some flaws in Jaylen Brown's game. It's pretty simple. Now, I dove in a little deeper to see the turnover differential, and that might just be a flaw in his game because he's a good on-ball defender. He's an amazing scorer. He just might have some lacking in the turnover department. That doesn't make him a bad player. That just means he has a weakness. And it's shown in the on-off numbers. I would want the Wizards to trade for him if they can make it work. I think he would be great wherever he goes. But people will say analytics is just spreading a narrative. There's no narrative in a negative on-off differential. That's just the numbers. The numbers don't lie. I mean, you can create narratives with the numbers, but it's up to you to look at that number and say, why has he been a negative player on-off for the past 3 years? What changed in 2022 from now that made him a plus 8.4 to a negative 5.6? Can we get him back to that 2022 form? What was he doing right back then that made him a plus 8 as opposed to now when he's a minus 5.6? He's shown the capability to be a positive player. I think he can obviously get back there if he's shown that he could do it. But there are flaws in his game that are seen in the turnover department. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but I just don't like when analytics get a bad rap, when people just don't understand what they are. It's like a boogeyman. It's like, oh, analytics, they're coming to get you. They're going to make you shoot a bunch of threes, and they're going to, I don't know. But a lot of the times it's really not that crazy of analytics. On-off is not, on-off ratio is not, it's not a perfect stat, but it tells you a lot about, and it's a lot better than plus minus. I see a lot of people use plus minus. I think the same way people use true shooting percentage instead of field goal percentage. I feel like that should be the same way we view on-off versus plus minus. It's just a more clear picture. It's not a perfect picture. The same way no stat is a perfect picture. But some stats give you a clearer picture than others, and it's pretty obvious. So I hope you guys learned something. Oh, while I was gone, the Hornets traded Miles Bridges to the Suns. So what I said about him being a net negative, him being in those lineups with LaMelo Ball, I think that's probably a good trade for Charlotte. I think they got back Grayson Allen, something else. But yeah, that also happened while I was gone, and I was talking about Charlotte. I think they've got another move coming because I don't know why they did this LaMelo Ball trade outside of being scared of injuries. But other than that, I hope you guys learned something today. I will be back as free agencies in a couple days. We can talk about that and more trades. See you.